who joined from India. Just going to switch on our webcams. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Vidya.
We're just giving a few minutes for participants to dial in. They are doing that. They've just been emailing Richa as well. But let's get started for the interest of those who are on time. Welcome once again. My name is Vidya Santanam. I'm the co-founder of FitBots. FitBots is a full-service OKR management platform. The way we help our clients is by helping them with OKR coaching, just so that they can get comfortable with OKRs as a framework. The platform that helps manage both from a feedback as well as a goal management perspective and engagement check-ins, which really helps teams to check in on the morale of others. So that's a little bit about FitBots. The reason why we're doing a webinar today is because we are amidst very strange times indeed. I think you would have all seen that the whole world has gone remote. So we thought it would be interesting to speak a little bit about how do we enable our own remote teams to be goal getters using OKRs as a framework. I'm very pleased to have along with me the presenter for today, Lawrence Walsh. He's the giant from There Be Giants. They are a leading OKR coach and consulting firm based out of the UK. Lawrence has coached several organizations and hundreds of teams to really adopt OKRs and drive it as a culture. So thank you, Lawrence. Thank you for doing this webinar along with FitBots.
Thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Our pleasure. So before I introduce you, Lawrence, I think it'll be great to have you introduce There Be Giants. I'm really curious as to why the name There Be Giants and what's behind that.
Okay, good question. So yeah, as you said, Vidya, There Be Giants are the UK's leading OKR consultancy, but we work internationally, really. You know, we've had recent clients in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago, Jamaica, all over North America, Europe, and Pacific regions. And we really help businesses actually implement OKRs properly and hit the ground running with them and make sure they get traction and success from using OKRs, because I'm sure if there's anybody online that's tried it, they've realized that actually it's not quite as easy as it sounds. And a lot of people read the books like Measure What Matters or watch John Doe's TED Talk or the Google videos and think, oh, these OKRs sound amazing. I'm going to implement them at my organization and give it a go, and then struggle. And nobody can really quite work out why they struggle or what it is that goes wrong. But they understand that they're not really seeing the impact they expected, but they still, of course, want the benefits that OKRs bring. You know, alignment, transparency, culture, all of those different elements. So we're there to help them out, basically. So people tend to get in touch with us, and we'll kind of help them along every step of the way and make sure that by the time we leave them, they're well on their way to having OKRs implemented properly. As for the name, well, we've always liked the term giants. We believe in giants, you know, giants of industry, giants of business, giants of in every walk of life, home life, charity, everything. And we've always sort of strived to create more giants out in the business world. It's not just because I'm 6'7" and Roger's 6'6", although that does help, but the name came from that, really, and that was the inspiration, you know. And we wanted something that sounded powerful and sounded creative, and it was born out of that.
Fantastic, and yes, may there be more giants. So wonderful to hear that. Just so that we share the format for today's webinar. Unlike other webinars, this would be more conversational. So I've got a bunch of questions for Lawrence, which have come in as frequently asked questions, especially from teams who are remote and now are on OKRs. So I'm going to go through that along with him as he shares his perspectives. At about 30 minutes from now, we would open it out for Q&A. And I do see that many of the participants who have joined the call today are either OKR practitioners or have implemented OKRs in your own organizations. So you could place your questions over to Lawrence through the chat window, and we'll relay them over so that he could respond to them. Okay, great. So on that note, let's get started with the first question, which is on OKRs itself. Since we've got a mix of people who are comfortable on OKRs, we'd really like to learn from you a little more about what have you seen work for OKRs? What are OKRs? What have you seen work when it comes to OKRs?
Okay, so we're starting off with the what are OKRs, right?
That's right. That's right.
Sure. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share my screen with you guys. Hopefully everyone can see that. Okay, so what are OKRs? Well, OKRs really are a tool set, a management practice to allow you to implement the strategy for your organization throughout your organization. Why is strategy important? Well, often when we start working with a client, the first thing we'll do when we're actually allowed to interact with people again is we'll start by asking them to list out their priorities for the next 3 to 5 years on post-it notes. And usually after the first 15-20 minutes, we'll end up with 3 or 4 post-it notes on the wall that look a little bit something like this. The top priorities for the coming years. Then after a few seconds, almost inevitably, every single time, somebody in the room will go, oh, yeah, but what about this? Or what about that? And then within 5 minutes, we're flooded with more priorities, and the wall of post-it notes looks actually a bit more like this. And why is this a problem? Well, if everything is a priority, everything that comes into your mind you want to work on, and you don't have a strategy for how you're going to implement those things, then nothing's going to be a priority. There's no way, with all the best intentions in the world, that everybody is going to implement those priorities, be able to implement all of those priorities in the given time period that you want. So what are OKRs? Well, OKRs, which stands for Objectives and Key Results, are simply an agile approach to be able to motivate and manage your performance in line with those business priorities. So what it's going to do first is funnel down those priorities into some key ones that you're going to shine the spotlight on for the coming period. And then it's going to allow you to cascade those down throughout your organization to be able to motivate your staff and manage the performance in line with those. They are very quickly becoming the de facto standard in goal setting and performance management. Any Silicon Valley organization you hear of these days is more than likely using OKRs. Google, of course, are the most famous users, but Spotify, Dropbox, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name one, they're probably using OKRs and using them very effectively. And they really are the de facto standard. But they're not new, They were born out of the management objectives framework, which started in the 50s. And then OKRs came to life in the 80s, really. So they've been around for almost 40 years, to be honest. But Google shouting about them has made them very popular. And of course, John Durr's book, Measure What Matters, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, has made them very popular indeed over the past 2 or 3 years. What I want to be very clear on, though, just as much as knowing what OKRs are, is what they are not. Because one of the biggest problems out there is, if you Google what are OKRs, is there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of fake news, as Mr. Trump might put it. And possibly the most damaging one of these is that OKRs are a replacement for KPIs. And it's simply not true. KPIs, your key point indicators, your health metrics are vital for running your business. And OKRs are not going to replace these, and they're never going to replace these. The two have to work hand in hand. Now, your KPIs will often become the metrics in your key results. You know, that's how harmonious a relationship should be. And just to illustrate this for you a little further, I want you to think about driving your car, okay? And you're in your car and you have got a final destination, probably, say somewhere a couple of 100 miles away. That final destination is like the mission for your organization. That's your vision, your long-term goal. Your KPIs are your dashboard, okay? They are your health metrics. They tell you basically if you're going to survive the journey. So in your car, that's your fuel level, your oil level, your water level, your speed. Are you going to make it, and are you going to get there in a safe way? They're the equivalent of your KPIs in your business. Are you making enough revenue? Have you got enough cash in the bank? All of those really granular things that you measure on a day-to-day basis. That's what sits in your dashboard. Your OKRs, on the other hand, are more like your sat nav that you can see there on the left-hand side. So they're more like your route guidance. They don't tell you exact health of your company, the exact health of your car, but they tell you the important information on how you're going to get to your final destination and which junctions you should take, and you know, the steps that you need to take to get there. And they break it down to a much more achievable and tangible level for you. So that's really the difference between OKRs and KPIs. KPIs tell you if you're going to survive the journey, like your health metrics, whereas OKRs basically tell you the steps and the how you're going to get there along the way. So that's a nice little reference point for you there. So why do you need to have a strategy that is, or a strategy practice framework that is able to be cascaded throughout your organization? Well, I want you to think of a normal everyday family, okay? And I'm sure many of you listening are parents and have got kids, and perhaps your kids aren't at school at the moment, but when they were and when they go back, what is often the first thing that your kids say when they get home from school? Usually it's one of these two things. Can I go and play, or can I go and play outside? Or the other one tends to be, can I have something to eat? So what's going on in the kids' heads? They're getting home from school, they're thinking about what they want, what they need, and they immediately turn to these two things. But by far the most common response that parents tend to give is something along the lines of, have you done your homework? And if you think about this, we can actually apply this same knowledge to businesses and to the way that individuals work within companies and to what the bigger goal of the organization is. Because what those kids are thinking about, and usually how most staff work, is what is the intrinsic reward and how can I get there fastest? And the intrinsic reward for kids is something like going and playing outside, having fun, and sating their desire for food, having something to eat. But you guys as the parents, or perhaps as the company leaders, know the bigger picture, and you've got bigger objectives in mind for these kids. You know that actually they need to do their homework, because if they don't, they might not become doctors or scientists or teachers or nurses or anything from that bigger picture that you know you want them to succeed in. All they're thinking about, though, is what's going to get them their reward the quickest. And that might be something like, in a company, basically doing whatever tasks are going to get them their bonus quickest or are going to make them look best. But that might actually make no difference whatsoever to how well the company performs, because they're not actually thinking about the company performance. They're not thinking about the bigger goals, usually because they're not being communicated well enough throughout the organization, but also maybe just because they don't understand what it is that they're trying to achieve. So OKRs allow that knowledge to be cascaded throughout the organization and allow all of the initiatives, tasks, and everything that's being done on a daily basis to align into the same mission and into the same vision, so that what the guys start working on at the very bottom is going to have an impact. It's not just going to have an impact on getting them their bonus or getting them home quicker at the end of the week, but it's going to actually make a really big difference to the bottom line of the company. So where do OKRs tend to sit? What sort of cadence do we put in for them? So if this is your typical pyramid, then you tend to have your mission and vision at the top. And that tends to be something more like a 10, 15, 20-year aspect horizon on it. You know, we wouldn't advise writing those as OKRs. That needs to be something much bigger, much bolder that you want to achieve. Then typically you have your 3-year goals, and there might be, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 of these things that you want to get done in the next 3 to 5 years. And again, probably too high level to turn into OKRs. But this really is where we start to see OKRs start to shine. When we come into this 12-month annual level, okay, so where you can start to be really a bit more particular about where you want your staff to focus over the next 12 months, and, you know, what position you want to be in 12 months time from now. So we tend to have those bigger ones, slightly bigger, and we call those strategic OKRs because they tend to sit more at a strategy level. Then we tend to break those down. We break those down into the 3-month OKRs. Now, let me point out from the start, this cadence isn't set in stone. You know, they don't have to be quarterly. They could be 4 monthly, they could be 6 monthly, they could be 2 monthly. That's up to you and your business. There's no correct doing OKRs that's set in stone. But they tend to come in at this level so that people can start to be a bit more tactical about what they want to achieve. Okay, so they can really start to get granular and think, okay, if that's where we want to be in 12 months' time, what do I need to do over the next 3 months in my team or cross-functionally to make sure we're achieving that, to make sure we're on track to achieve those 12-month OKRs, which are in turn going to make sure we achieve our 3-year goals, which of course is aligned directly into the mission. And then the tactics and tasks, so the activities that you're going to do to make sure you're achieving those OKRs. That's the next thing, that's the next level down, because one of the really important things about OKRs is they don't tell you how you're going to achieve something, they just tell you what you want to get achieved. So a key result should always be outcome focused, not task focused. You should be leaving your teams up to come up with the inspiration and innovation to actually go and do it, rather than telling them exactly and dictating to them how they should do it. So that is a very quick, in a nutshell, 10 minutes overview of actually what OKRs are and where they sit in the organization. Vidya, do you want to jump back in? I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's crystal clear, Lawrence. And I think that also brings me to the next question. And I did get a question on my chat window as well from Mansaj. In fact, Mansaj is an internal practitioner of OKRs. And
Okay.
one of the questions that he has is, this is definitely business in not so usual times.
Yeah.
The entire globe has gone remote, and of course there are business blips all over as we see. So what are your perspectives, having worked with organizations who have set OKRs, especially in times when business is not so usual? So what do you think companies should do who have already set OKRs?
Okay, yeah, great question. So we are sort of waxing lyrical at the moment. We're preaching this statement of pivot, don't park your OKRs. The very worst thing you could do as a company right now, if you're using OKRs, would be to drop all your OKRs completely and start firefighting, and all your staff are at home, not quite knowing what's going on, not quite knowing if their jobs are secure, not quite knowing if the business is going to survive. And you take away their OKRs, so they have nothing to strive towards, nothing to work on, and nobody really knows their place anymore. That's absolutely the worst thing you could do. So the first thing you need to do really is take a look at your OKRs, your current OKRs you've got set. And you're asking yourself 3 questions. Which OKRs can continue? Now, some of them you might find, actually, yeah, there's no reason we can't work on this from home. Absolutely fine, it stays. Secondly, the ones that can't continue, which of them need to remain in focus during this business critical time, but actually need to be adapted? So let me give you an example. A fella that I was speaking to the other day, his number 1 key result for his team, and it was a customer success team. And this key result was tied into making sure the renewals stayed high for their software. And the number one key result that they had set was to increase the number of on-site meetings they have with their clients by about 200%. Okay, so that was their number one key result for their April to June quarter. Okay, so what's the problem here? Obviously, they can't go on site with clients. So what do? Do they drop this key result? But what's the risk of that? If they drop it, well, actually, that could be a problem, because the renewals number, which is their headline target for the organization for the year, the renewals number is still key. That's still a critical thing that they need to align into. So if they drop that OKR of getting on site with customers, then they're going to have a problem, because they're going to see that headline renewals figure drop rapidly. But obviously something needs to change. So that needs to be adapted. Okay, so they have to change that to take part in more Zoom meetings, increase that by 300%, because they know that that doesn't have the same amount of impact as being on site, or various other things they can change their key messaging, etc. So they don't want to park that key result, but they do need to pivot it, because they need to adapt it to suit the times that we're in. Or there's the last option, which is to just park your OKRs that are no longer relevant. You know, the whole strategy for your organization might need to change. If that's the case, fine, park your OKRs, don't get rid of them, don't delete them. You know, hopefully the whole world isn't going to end, and within a few months we will get back to normal. And at that point, it's unlikely that those OKRs that you set before are still completely irrelevant. So make sure you put them in place somewhere and keep them safe. But then you need to come up with some OKRs that your team can still work towards. Okay, it's really important now that you don't leave your staff sat at home kind of wondering what's going on. That really is the worst thing that can happen. So pivot, don't park your OKRs. You've got to keep your staff aligned. You've got to keep them working to the same goals. This might be a really critical time for your business. You know, I've spoken to some businesses who it's not really changed that much for, and I've spoken to some businesses where this is going to be a make or break time. That is the sad fact. And when that's the case, it is vital that all your staff have crystal clear impact focused goals, you know, outcome focused goals where they can see the direct impact that their work is going to have. Do not just set them a load of tasks to do, you know, give them those key results, still stay strict on that discipline. Now, the thing that you might want to do is shorten the cadence. So in that example I gave before, we were setting the top level goals at 12 months and the shorter goals at 3 months. Well, if this is a business critical time for you guys, that's probably not going to be enough. So the advice that I've been given to a lot of clients is, okay, well, change those 12-month top level goals that you want to achieve to just a 3-month goal. You know, we are probably going to be in lockdown working remotely for 3 months. We need to accept that. So set that as your top level goal. And then the OKRs that align into those, just really shorten the cadence, make them really nice and nimble and agile, and maybe just reduce them down to a month so they can see every single day the direct impact that they're having and the needles that it's moving. So please, for the love of God, don't just drop your OKRs completely. You will end up in full firefighting mode. That's definitely the worst thing you can do. My top tips: what OKRs can continue, which ones need to remain in focus but need to be pivoted, and maybe try working to a shorter cadence. There's nothing out there saying that you have to stick to a year and 3 months or whatever you were working to before.
Thanks, Lawrence. I think the message is really clear about not parking OKRs, but really pivoting and probably tweaking them to really the context and cadence to, let's say, a daily, even not a weekly, probably even a daily, if the business allows that. Great response to that. I'm going on to the next question, and this is again in context to to where we are today. And teams have all gone remote, as we know. We have been used to working remotely in the past, but I think the scale and the meteoric rate at which we've all gone remote is never like before. So many of the participants today have got remote teams, or all of them have got remote teams and who have got OKRs. So what have you seen work well when it comes to managing OKRs in context to remote teams? What are some of the best practices?
Yeah, okay. So let's start with just the simple fact that OKRs are absolutely effective for remote teams. And if you hear any different, then put that person in touch with me, because I think, if anything, they actually work better for remote teams, possibly. But what is really, really important is you have to enable your people to succeed. And what I mean by that is you've got to have full transparency. Okay. So one of the biggest problems that leadership teams have, especially in times of crisis and especially when things are remote, is that leadership team might be having 1, 2, 3 Zoom calls a day where they're firefighting and sorting out emergencies and doing this and doing that. And they kind of forget that what's being discussed in those Zoom calls isn't being communicated out through the rest of the organization. And it's vital that those things are communicated through the rest of the organization. You've got to be fully transparent, and communication is key. You have got to go over the top on communication, especially if you're a business leader. Really go over the top on it, and you're probably just about hitting the right amount then. So how can you enable people to succeed? 2 main ways. Firstly, just make sure they have a way of checking in with each other, whether that's through Zoom or through Slack or Microsoft Teams or any of those things. People have to actually have the facility to be able to communicate quickly and to be able to stay in the loop on things. And secondly, it's all about your transparency with OKRs. And I know that we're not here to kind of do plugs or anything like that, but you've got to have a dedicated system, and systems like Fitbots are just fantastic. If you're trying to make it work on a Google sheet or an Excel sheet or anything like that, you've pretty much got no chance, to be honest. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news on that one, but they make such a big difference. And things like Fitbots, where it integrates with Slack, so you can update it 2 ways, and all the team get notified when there's an update to the key results or the objectives. The shared task boards within there, so people can show what they're working on without having to be able to be sat next to each other. Really, that is the key for remote teams: full transparency and full enablement. Make sure you've actually, if you're using Zoom, you've paid for Zoom, so their meetings can last more than half an hour. Make sure people have the things they need to be able to work effectively from home. And it usually comes down to a couple of pieces of key software. Asana, Fitbots, and Zoom will usually get you most of the way. So that would kind of be my top tips there, and overdo it on the communication.
Yeah, I like what you say in terms of tech enablement as well as communication, both going hand in hand. So thanks for your perspectives on that. Now, again, an interesting point about OKRs is, and I'm sure all the practitioners here would have actually sensed that, is that it's de-linked from compensation. Now that's really a big shift from where performance practices have been used to in the past, very, very tightly coupled with performance reviews, ratings, and compensation. And here we have OKRs, which are de-linked, or so to be. So what have you seen? So what's your response on that for the team, Lawrence, and how do you think people can implement it without the linkage to compensation?
Okay, so I think this is the hardest question in the world of OKRs right now, actually. I guess my first question would be, do you have to have bonuses within the organization? A lot of companies now, especially coming out of Silicon Valley and all these places that tend to be at the front of innovation, are actually getting rid of their bonus schemes for more fair matters. But anyway, let's say you do have to, and it's got reward and compensation has to be there in some way. The way I view this, you've got 3 options, and I'll go through each of those. You directly link your OKR success to reward and comp. That's option number one. So, 80% success as an average on your key results equals 80% of your bonus or 80% of your pay rise, etc. What are the problems with that? First of all, it's going to encourage straight away what we call sandbagging, which is where you basically set your key results to be very achievable. If I said to you, Vidya, right, I want you to come up with your key results, and that they're linked to your bonus that you're going to get at the end of the quarter, why on earth would you stretch yourself? It makes no sense whatsoever. And as soon as people aren't stretching themselves, you're killing any sort of innovation within the business. People are going to play it so safe that it's pretty much not worth bothering to do OKRs anymore, because innovation is one of the pillars of OKRs that it should encourage. It's also going to kill any sort of teamwork, because I don't want to have to rely on you in another team to be able to do your part for me to be able to get my bonus. So silos are not only going to be reinforced, they're going to shoot up where they weren't before, and they're going to be sort of reinforced with triple-plated armor. And also, business as usual gets put to one side. So one of the things that I didn't mention when I was talking about OKRs before and what they are, is they should be used for very specific things, which is to drive growth, drive change, or drive innovation. And basically that means that they shouldn't be used for business as usual activities. That's what your KPIs are there to measure, your health metrics. If your OKRs are what's determining your reward and compensation, then all business as usual is going to get put to one side, because why would people still keep up with their business as usual if that's going to make no difference to their bonus at the end of the quarter? So they're the big pitfalls from option number one, which is a direct link between OKRs and reward and comp. Option number two, you have this kind of general linkage where a manager kind of makes a decision on how well they contributed to the OKRs and how well they performed. Yeah, okay, it's all right. It's not quite as evil as the direct link. But the things you really have to look out for if you're going to do it that way are things like favoritism and bias. I mean, to me, it seems very clear that you're opening yourself up for a lot of trouble with your managers, where if one person gets their full bonus and another person doesn't, then it's going to come down to, well, yeah, but that person just, prefers that person, or that person just shows off in front of the manager but doesn't actually do any work for the rest of the team. You're kind of asking for trouble. So option number three is what I call a cultural link. And what you're actually looking for here is not necessarily how the individual contributed to the performance of the key results. So, how well they succeeded in their key results. Now, of course, if they're failing all the time, that's a problem. And that's where HR do need to come in and start to put in a performance plan, etc. But actually, how well did they perform against their OKRs in line with your values? If one of your values, for example, is integrity, but they succeeded in all their OKRs, but at the same time completely screwed over all the rest of their teammates, then that's not very good. That person's got impressive results, but actually it's made the performance of the team drop considerably. Okay, so something like that, how well did they perform in line with your values? How well did they embrace the OKR process? So, for example, were they willing to lead the check-ins, even if they weren't a manager? There's nothing to say that managers have to lead check-ins. So were they willing to jump in and help and actually get on board with OKRs in general? Did they really strive to learn from failure? So if they missed a key result, did they do a full analysis and exploration of why it failed and how they should improve it in the future? Another cornerstone of OKRs that's often missed. And did they actively lead and participate in retrospectives, for example? OKRs are an ever-evolving process in every single organization, and people have to embrace the need to do retrospectives and learn and adapt, and that's vital. And actually, what's going to make a much bigger difference for your company, and therefore personally where I think reward and compensation should be linked, is if people are embracing the OKR process and actually the cornerstones of OKRs and what it means. That's going to make a bigger difference for your company than actually how well they performed in the key results. I promise you that. Now, again, okay, this is difficult because how do you measure it? It's a tough thing to measure. And again, you can just go for opinion off the manager. Personally, I would rather see something a bit more like a 360-degree feedback done from the people within their OKR teams. Actually, how did that individual contribute? And it only needs to be 4 or 5 questions. It takes a few minutes. If you can put a survey together like that and link that to your reward and compensation, you are really onto a winner. That's where you're going to be on fire with your OKRs and where you'll see a massive growth of performance within the organization.
Thanks, Lawrence. I think what we really hear you say is reward and recognize OKR behaviors and contribution and the enthusiasm around OKRs.
100%, yeah.
And
I appreciate it's a difficult thing to reward and measure, but it's worth the effort, 100% worth the effort.
Got it. So on this note, I think we've covered about 30 minutes into the great conversation along with Lawrence. I'm going to open it out for questions at this stage. You could either raise your hand, since we've got a really cozy and cohesive group of participants. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a change. So you can raise your hand on Zoom virtually, and Richa would unmute you so that you could ask your question to Lawrence. I think that would work better. So I'm just going to give a few minutes for the warm-up question. Who wants to go first? And feel free to switch on your webcams as well, your videos as well. The first one is the hardest.
I'll tell you what, I just want to offer another key piece of advice about doing this remotely, if that's all right, whilst people are thinking of questions. The hardest bit, actually, and if we have OKR facilitators on the line, then I'm sure they'll appreciate this. The hardest bit is actually facilitating the OKR setting. So like I said about pivoting, not parking your OKRs, the chances are you're going to have to go through, both with your leadership teams and the teams below these, some sessions where they create new OKRs. That's difficult remotely. You can't just chuck Post-its on the wall. You can't stand up and interact. There are going to be some people with kids on their knee. There are going to be some people who have to let their dog out. There are going to be some people who have to go and answer the door. And you've got to embrace that, because that's okay. That's part of remote working. So there are just some sort of cautions I want to give people to make sure they do this smoothly. Firstly, preparation is key here. You've got to have some slides built. You've got to ask people to have pre-thought of ideas and bring them with them into the session, rather than just coming up with them on the fly like you might usually do. But also use some software. There's software out there like Idea Hunt and Mural, which is fantastic for facilitating remote setups like these. Take advantage of them, but make sure you get them set up before you go into the session. Slow down would be my next key. You're not going to be able to work at the same pace as you would do with everybody in the room. And then the next few I kind of tie together really, but what's very common on online calls is you can't really read each other's body language, right? Which means you often end up with people talking over each other a lot. And the fact of the matter is, what the problem is with OKRs and facilitating a session like that in this case is the loudest voices will be the people who end up getting their strategies and their ideas taken forward. They might not necessarily be the best ideas, the mum or dad with the 3 kids sat on their knee juggling breakfast and lunch might actually have better ideas of what to do to move forward. But because they've got other things to focus on and they've not got the loudest voice, their ideas might not get taken forward. So you have to allow people the opportunity to do what's called working alone together. Okay. So having silence during calls is okay. If you take 15 minutes where everybody goes on mute and contributes their ideas, like I say, through Idea Hunt or through Mural, that's by far the best way of doing it. And then again, some sort of anonymized voting system for which strategies you're going to take forward. And again, you can do that through those tools. But you have to let people be able to contribute in their own way, not just through chatting about it like we are doing today, or like you would do in a room, because it's so much harder for people to actually be able to get their voice heard. So please take those key tips with you when you actually do the sessions. Otherwise, you're going to end up in difficulty, really.
Thanks, Lawrence. And I think you've also moved into remote OKR coaching. How's that been for the Heavy Giants so far?
Yeah, like I say, it's fine, but you've got to follow those key tips. and probably the most important one is the preparation. You can get away with doing it a bit more on the fly when you're there in the room with post-it notes and people milling around, etc. You've got to be so hyper prepared for when it comes to remote coaching. And you've got to know exactly what you're going to talk about, and you've got to have the slides ready, and you've got to have people to come with ideas, and get them written down and ready to go. And I'm facilitating this one in another one in an hour or so this afternoon. And actually, it works great. It's not as easy as doing it in the room, but it's definitely achievable. And there are some great tools out there to help people do it well.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that tip. So we'll move over to questions. You could feel free to either ping them on the chat window, or if you'd like to get unmuted and call it out, that's fine by us as well.
Obviously covered it well enough.
Yes, I think it's just probably the time of the day as well, close to 5. Yes, Monica's got a question.
Okay.
Monica, we're just going to unmute you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, Monica, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hi, Lawrence. Thank you so much for all the tips that you gave. And I am the head HR for a company, and somewhere I've been given this great opportunity to dive OKRs. We
Okay.
have very recently jotted down all the OKRs for each and every member of a team, wherein there are 38 of us. There are different teams, and we have worked for everyone. We have done multiple times the review meetings, and we have now ready with an Excel sheet for now, because since it's just the very first phase for us. We have kept the reviews of OKRs on a weekly basis.
Okay.
Yeah. So somewhere or the other, since this is the lockdown time and the entire economy is facing a lot of problems, we are, though it is just the second week, but then since chatting with the other team members that how is it going with them, they are finding it difficult to put their progress, because a lot of KRs they are not able to even touch, because it is related to some performance which is going outside maybe.
Right.
We are unable to somewhere keep up the motivation for the team. And since it is very new, not necessarily that every one of them must have understood what OKRs are the way we few must have understood. Though we are trying, we are having multiple questions with them, interacting questions with them, and trying to make them understand. But yes, the way you very beautifully explain that it has to be absolutely people should be enthusiastic about it, right? I mean, this is a very beautiful tool that we can use. So somewhere one, that spring is missing somewhere. That excitement and enthusiasm is somewhere I am finding it difficult to pass on to them.
Okay. So I think my advice here would be to strip your OKRs back. You don't, where you maybe have 3 or 4 OKRs when you were all working together, 1 or 2 will probably do. And I couldn't quite tell if what you were saying was that you would use you use OKRs on an individual basis or not. I would discourage you from using OKRs at an individual level and having people with their own individual OKRs anyway. I basically think that is, it's very difficult not to just end up writing tasks, which means you're losing the power of impact-focused OKRs. But also team level goals, common goals, shared goals, especially in a time of crisis, are so much more motivating for individuals. Everybody's striving towards the same thing rather than striving towards their own thing. So maybe just take them back up to a team level and have 3 or 4 that they can actually achieve whilst working from home. You know, that's the other thing. They don't have to be as stretching anymore during times of crisis. You know, if people feel like they can't achieve it and they're sat at home demotivated anyway, all that's going to do is demotivate them further. So there's nothing wrong with having attainable key results at this point. And personally, I just find that individual OKRs are an excuse for managing performance, and OKRs aren't there for managing performance. You know, they're there for achieving goals for the organization. So try just taking a step back, streamline your OKRs a little bit, reduce the number, set them at a team level so they have a common shared purpose, and also just start to have more conversations. So if you were checking in weekly before, check in daily or twice a week. And they don't necessarily need to be reporting progress in those calls every single day, but at least they can have a chat about what they're working on and what they're doing. And, you know, it's somebody different to talk to, isn't it? Apart from like their husbands or wives and their kids, etc. Everybody likes a bit of reprieve from time to time.
Right. Yeah.
I hope that's helped.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. We initially, when we started, we had like 34 different objectives, and then you know, somewhere we then came down to you know, 14. So there are 14 major objectives that the entire team is sharing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to give you some perspective,
yeah,
I've never allowed one of my clients to have more than 5 objectives at any one level. So 14 is still more 300% more than I would allow a client to have.
Oh, okay. For the entire team, you're saying? So like I individually have 3, the other people have 3 each, but then all are somewhere interconnecting, and entire in the organization we have 14 listed as 14 objectives, like that.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. I thought you meant you just had 14 at the high level.
No, 3 each.
No.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's fine. Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
But like I say, try just taking it up to the team level and giving people that shared goal.
Yes.
Sorry about that. There was a follow-on question on this in context to from Anindita.
Oh, I've lost you, Vidya.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll take it up. She asks, how do you map progress in KRs?
That's right.
I'm not too sure I understand the question, but I will give it a go. I presume you're just saying, I don't know, Vidya, what's your understanding of this question?
So my understanding is, how do you measure?
How do you measure progress? That is a how long is a piece of string question, because it completely depends what the key result is. So hopefully you have some sort of metric in your key result that is a measure of success of achieving the objective. So usually it would just be a case of updating the metric, but like I say, piece of dedicated OKR software like Fitbots will show really clearly how you show progress against your key results. Just whilst we're talking about measuring progress, there's one other thing that I would love to point out that people should be measuring if they're not already, and that's confidence. And confidence is all about how confident are you in achieving that key result by the end of the quarter or by the end of the cycle you're in. And it's vital that people are recording confidence, because they are your early warning systems, basically. They're your hazard lights on your car. And they're where you need to be. So say you've got 4 key results, 2 of them have confidence at 8 out of 10, 1 confidence at 6 out of 10, and 1 confidence at 3 out of 10. that 3 out of 10 is where you need to be focusing all your time, effort, and energy as a manager to make sure it's getting pulled back up in terms of confidence. That's where you should be focusing. And that actually, you don't even need to be checking in as regularly against those ones that have high confidence as you do against the ones that have 3. And once you've pulled that up, bring that one that was at 5 up. And that also allows you to have more dedicated check-ins as well, so you can focus your time a lot more clearly and keep them really nice and short and to the point. And systems like Fitbots allow you to track confidence alongside the progress of key results, and it's really important that you do.
Thanks, Lawrence. And as they say, the confidence index is like the front view mirror. So it really helps you to coach teams as you move through the quarterly cadence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got time for probably one more question. If anybody has it, just in the interest of time, we're about 5 minutes to the end of the webinar. So does anybody have the last question? Yes, I can see Monica's question. When is the right time to switch to an OKR app?
Now, especially with remote working. Like I said, you've got to have that transparency key. So you do need some sort of OKR app, really, rather than just working on Google Sheets or something like that. I promise it'll make a big difference. Generally speaking, though, not at times of crisis. I usually advise to my clients, as soon as you have more than 5 members of staff working with OKRs, you should be moving away from Google Sheets or Excel or stuff like that, and you should be moving towards a dedicated OKR app, such as Fitbots. I promise it'll make a big difference.
Thanks for that, Lawrence. Thank you for the question, Monica. Okay, so I'm guessing that was the last question. But if should anybody have further questions, we'll be happy to have you email them to us. And would like to thank Lawrence for his time and for sharing. Okay, we did get another question. Okay, so I was already on to my thank you speech for you. So I'm just going to go back to that question, and this is from Ruben. Hi, Ruben. I'm just going to call out your question. How does one establish MNCs with their systems and process and performance management implement OKR? So this is a really good question. I think the question is, we already have a performance management system. We're an MNC, and here we have OKR. So how does that all come together? So yeah, thanks for this question.
This would need at least another hour's webinar for us to answer, to be perfectly honest. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it, Rahul, in another call if you want to get in touch with me. It's something we've got a lot of experience of, but what I would say is that it needs to start at the top, and it needs to be done properly, and probably just in one function or one team or one site first, and get really, really good at it before you try to take it out to, probably however many thousands of people are in your organization. Become expert at it with maybe 100, 150 people first, and then gradually roll out. So it's what we call a phased approach rather than a big bang approach. That's what I would recommend doing, basically. But like I say, if you want to get in touch with me, my LinkedIn is linkedin.com/in/OKR expert. Feel free to drop me a message, and we can have a further chat about that, no problem. But yeah, it's a big task, but a very achievable one that we've done many times.
I think our experience has been very similar to pilot, and many of the practitioners on the call also would have piloted it before you really roll it out, full hog to the entire organization. So absolutely agree with you. Okay, great.
Cool.
All right. It was a pleasure talking to you, Lawrence, and thank you for going through all the questions and the great responses to that. What we would definitely remember is, especially at times like this, when there is a business blip, don't drop OKRs, keep them going, pivot
More
them.
important than ever.
Yeah, with them, make the cadence sharper and probably more frequent, which itself becomes a very engaging conversation with your teams who are already remote. So it's a point of engagement with them.
Mm-hmm.
Should you need to connect with Lawrence, we will. He's on LinkedIn, as he mentioned, and you could feel free to connect with him.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, and thank you to all the participants for all the great questions. We look forward to the next one again. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Bye-bye.